You know that feeling when you're driving on the highway and suddenly it just like starts pouring rain?
Oh, yeah, a complete torrential downpour.
Right, a downpour where you can barely see the taillights in front of you.
And your wipers are on their absolute highest setting, but they're doing essentially nothing against the sheer volume of water hitting the glass.
Exactly. So what is the very first thing you do in that situation? Well, you grip the steering wheel tighter.
Yeah, you really do. You lean forward until your chest is practically touching the column.
You tense every single muscle in your shoulders and arms as if, squeezing a piece of leather is somehow going to control the weather patterns.
Or fundamentally alter the physics of your tires on the wet asphalt. It's totally illogical.
It is. That biological response is entirely counterproductive, but we all do it. We harbor this deeply ingrained delusion that by physically tightening up, by internalizing stress and manufacturing anxiety, we are somehow managing the completely uncontrollable variables happening outside our vehicle.
Right, and it just leaves you completely exhausted.
You finally park your car, and your shoulders are aching, you're drained. But think about this for a second. What if you just let go? I mean, obviously keep your hands on the wheel and drive safely.
Right, please still drive safely.
Yeah, but what if you release that mental white-knuckled grip? What if you genuinely accepted that the rain is falling, the road is slick, and absolutely everything happening around you is exactly as it must be?
That is a massive mental shift.
It really is. And welcome to today's deep dive. We are so glad you're here with us. Today we are exploring a radically different framework for viewing the world and our place in it.
Yeah, we're looking at a pretty uncompromising philosophical approach to dealing with the fundamental stress of human existence.
So the mission for this deep dive is to explore a really fascinating, beautifully written, but deeply provocative philosophical text. It's by an author named Kang, and it's titled, "Everything is Inevitable, Only I Roam Free."
Such a powerful title.
Right. Our goal today is to examine the text's central premise. And that premise is that the absolute shortcut to a completely carefree life, a life free from the fear of death, the anxiety of loss, or the sting of tragedy, is to simply accept that absolutely everything in the universe is inevitable.
Everything, which is a huge claim to make.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because living in inevitable reality sounds great as an abstract concept. But what does it actually demand of a person in practice?
Well, in practice, according to Feng, it demands a total surrender of the ego, which ultimately looks like complete psychological liberation.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, the text builds this core conceptual framework right away. The author argues that knowing everything is inevitable allows a person to stop fighting the flow of the universe.
Meaning you just sort of let things happen.
Exactly. When you let things happen naturally, rather than trying to force outcomes, you find actual inner peace. And the promise made here is substantial. By recognizing inevitability, the text claims we can completely free ourselves from daily worries, from the heavy chains of emotional attachments, and even from the fear of death itself.
And the imagery the author uses to describe this state of mind is just striking. Feng writes that those who accept inevitability become like eagles soaring across the vast blue sky.
Or dragons swimming in the rolling seas.
Yeah, you remain completely unmoved by praise and equally unmoved by disgrace. You live gracefully through the blooming and the withering of flowers.
The rise and fall of clouds.
Right. The text even claims that with a blade held to your neck, you remain perfectly calm.
Unshaken by the trembling earth. It's wild. You do not rejoice when success arrives, nor do you grieve when adversity strikes.
Whether a disaster hits or sudden fortune just falls into your lap, it is all framed as merely a function of nature moving forward.
Yeah, nature just doing its thing.
So to make this mechanism a bit clearer for you listening, think of it like falling into a fast-moving river. The human ego's immediate instinct is to panic.
Oh, for sure. You try to swim upstream.
You fight the current. And by doing that, you exhaust yourself, you swallow water, and you spend the entire experience in sheer terror.
Right, because you're fighting the inevitable.
Exactly. But if you truly accept that the current is inevitable, that this river is going where it is going regardless of your kicking, you stop fighting.
You turn onto your back.
You float.
Yeah.
And you might actually look up and enjoy the scenery.
Oh.
The physical river hasn't changed at all. The water is exactly the same. But your internal experience transitions from an absolute nightmare to a peaceful ride.
What's fascinating here is how the text frames this concept of inevitability. Because, in a lot of Western philosophies, strict determinism is viewed as this depressing fatalistic trap.
Yeah, it usually breeds apathy, right?
Exactly. People think, well, if nothing I do changes the outcome, why bother trying at all? But Shui Feng frames inevitability as the ultimate key to psychological freedom.
It was not about giving up.
No, not at all. It isn't about giving up. It is entirely about removing the anxiety generated by the illusion of control. When you finally understand this, the text argues, nothing is truly urgent.
Wow.
Life becomes a peaceful existence where you feel as though you are always wandering in a heavenly realm.
I mean, floating down a river and soaring like an eagle sounds wonderful. It sounds peaceful. But reading through the source material, I definitely found myself questioning how this philosophy holds up when the scale of the chaos increases.
Oh, you mean like real disasters?
Yeah. It is one thing to accept the rain, or even a fast river. But how does this mindset process actual world-shattering disasters?
Well, that is where the text takes a very sharp, deliberate turn into extreme detachment. The author does not ignore macro-level catastrophes.
No, he really leans into them.
He does. Schweffing applies some highly provocative, almost darkly comedic reframing techniques to major societal and global events.
Let's look at those examples because I found them genuinely jarring. The text explicitly states that when an earthquake strikes or a tsunami crashes into a coastline, or even if a global world war erupts,
Right.
you should treat it like the neighbor's child letting out a loud fart.
It is just a deliberate use of the absurd to tackle the terrifying.
And the analogies continue. If a train derails, or a massive flood destroys a town, or a bird flu spreads across the population, you are instructed to view it as nature simply putting on a theatrical play for you.
Just a show to watch.
Yeah, and it gets into societal issues, too. When officials are deeply corrupt, when police abuse their authority, when someone is unjustly imprisoned, or even if a person hits rock bottom and commits suicide.
The text advises the reader to think of these events as merely a subplot in a novel.
Right. And I should say here, regarding the political elements like police abuse and corruption, we are absolutely not taking any sides or endorsing these viewpoints. We are simply trying to impartially convey the ideas contained in the original source material for you.
Exactly. We're just looking at the author's philosophical framework.
Right. But I really have to push back on this, though. Treating a world war like a bodily function, or looking at systemic corruption or someone taking their own life as just a novel's subplot. Does this framework of inevitability cross the line into apathy or even cruelty?
That's a fair question.
I mean, framing a flood that destroys homes as a theatrical play feels completely disconnected from human empathy.
This raises an important question, and honestly, it is the most common friction point when analyzing this kind of radical detachment. But if we break down the psychological mechanism impartially, the author is not advocating for cruelty.
Okay, then what is the goal?
The text is advocating for a specific cognitive reframing designed solely to protect one's inner peace against forces that are simply too large to fight. Think about the sheer scale of a tsunami or a geopolitical war.
They're massive.
Right. These are massive terrors where an individual has zero functional control.
Gripping the steering wheel won't stop the tsunami.
Precisely the point. A human brain cannot easily process the existential weight of a global catastrophe without suffering severe anxiety. So, the mechanism the text employs is intentionally scaling down these uncontrollable terrors into trivial, mundane, or even ridiculous concepts.
I see. So by shrinking a world war into a neighbor's noisy child, the event loses its psychological power to destroy your mind.
Exactly. It is a defensive barrier. You are not denying that the event is happening. You are just refusing to let the event shatter your internal equilibrium.
Okay, framing a distant global disaster as a TV subplot makes sense as a survival tactic, especially for navigating today's 24-hour news cycle. It protects you from the weight of the world.
It really does.
But how does this inevitability shield work when the disaster is in your own living room? It's easy to detach from a distant war, but what happens when it's your spouse leaving or a parent dying?
Well, the author applies that exact same uncompromising lens to the intimate sphere. The philosophy methodically addresses the most painful personal losses a human can endure.
Starting with relationships, right?
Yeah. Yes, starting with intimate relationships. The text states that when a spouse runs off, or a daughter elopes, or a partner takes a lover, or a third party interferes and ruins a relationship.
But you're all devastating things.
Right, but the text says you should consider it as releasing a bird from a cage.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the text builds on that metaphor, noting that once the bird is released, you no longer have to worry about feeding it or caring for it.
Right, the burden is gone.
Exactly.
Mm.
There is a fundamental shift happening there from ownership to stewardship.
That shift changes the entire dynamic of how we view human connection.
It does. We are so conditioned to view relationships as possessions. We say my spouse, my partner, my best friend. We conceptually put the people we love into a cage of our own expectations.
Yeah, we lock them in.
And because they are in that cage, we suffer this chronic underlying anxiety about keeping the door locked, keeping them happy, and ensuring they never escape.
It's exhausting.
But if you view the people in your life as wild things temporarily resting on your windowsill, if you view their eventual departure as a natural inevitability, the dynamic changes completely. When they finally fly away, you don't feel robbed of a possession. You feel relieved of the burden of caging them.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the author is systematically dismantling the ego's attachments. And our most intense attachments are familial.
Definitely.
The text addresses this by stating that when your parents pass away, or when your children face misfortune, or, say, a friend's house catches fire.
Which sounds awful.
It does, but you should imagine it simply as a dark cloud passing overhead.
And the phrasing of that cloud metaphor reveals a lot about the how of this philosophy. A cloud casts a shadow, it makes things dark and cold for a moment, but then the wind inevitably blows it away.
It doesn't stay forever.
Right. By viewing grief as a passing weather pattern rather than a permanent state of being, you remove the expectation that you are fundamentally broken by the loss. You allow the sadness to pass through you instead of letting it set up camp in your mind.
That is the exact mechanism. You experience the shadow, but you do not try to trap the cloud.
Wow.
And finally, the text addresses the ultimate attachment, our attachment to our own existence.
Our own death.
Yeah. When facing your own death, the instruction is to see it as the end of an earthly journey and the immediate beginning of a heavenly one.
The author literally instructs the reader to smile and embrace it.
Yeah, smile. The rhetorical question posed is, what else is there that cannot be let go? What else needs to be worried about?
I mean, by reframing death as a joy and heartbreak as relief, the philosophy theoretically leaves the reader with absolutely zero leverage points for anxiety.
Zero.
If you don't fear dying, and you don't fear losing your loved ones, the standard anxiety loop of the human condition is entirely broken.
It creates a state of total invulnerability, but achieving it requires immense psychological discipline.
Which is probably why the author doesn't just leave the reader with abstract metaphors about birds and clouds.
Yeah.
The text actually concludes with a specific manifesto, 8 principles to live by as a carefree roamer.
Yeah, let's get into those.
Rather than just reading them as a sequential list, let's look at the major themes of these principles, because they dictate how you actually practice this detachment day to day.
Okay, sure.
The first major theme tackles our origins and our family.
Right. The text argues that coming into this world is an inevitable act of life, meaning you should never resent heaven, the earth, or your parents.
So no blaming your childhood.
Exactly. Whether you face prosperity or hardship, you accept your starting point calmly.
And it speaks specifically to parents, stating that regardless of their ability, their social status, their health, or even their temper, they are your inevitable connections.
You're stuck with them, essentially.
Right. The text says your only obligation is to give them filial piety, which essentially means a deep, unwavering duty and respect for your parents. You don't try to change them, and you don't waste energy wishing you'd been born to different people. You completely accept the hand you were dealt.
And from family origins, the principles expand into how we handle relationships and our careers. The philosophy demands we treat all relationships as entirely fluid.
Fluid meaning what exactly?
Meaning people arrive and people leave. When someone enters your life, you do not restrict them. When they exit, you do not try to tether them.
Oh, that makes sense. And it applies that exact same fluidity to our bank accounts and our professional status. The text explicitly warns against letting an official position tie you down or letting wealth bind your identity.
It uses a rather poetic line for this, actually. Life is a dream, waking up makes it empty.
That's beautiful.
It argues that losing your job is actually a form of liberation. Losing your wealth simply means you finally have peace and quiet. If someone abandons you, your heart is left empty and clear.
Notice the mechanism at work again there. You aren't losing valuable assets. You are shedding burdensome responsibilities.
Exactly. But the text takes this shedding of burdens to a much more radical extreme when it addresses human institutions.
This theme really stood out to me. The text claims that if your family structure, your country, your religion, or your political party disappears, it is nothing more than the removal of shackles.
Which chains falling off.
Yeah, it compares the collapse of these massive institutions to taking off a set of old restrictive clothes.
The author asserts that without these man-made structures, a person is finally able to align with nature and resonate with the Tao, which in this context refers to the fundamental natural order and flow of the universe.
And it goes far with this.
It really does. The text goes as far as saying that burning sacred scriptures actually brings you closer to your natural state.
The logic there is absolutely fascinating once you view it through the lens of inevitability. Think about it. Scriptures, national borders, political affiliations, these are all artificial maps humans created to exert control over the world.
They are the ultimate manifestations of the illusion of control we talked about earlier.
Yes. If you accept that the river of life is going where it's going, you don't need a map provided by a religion or a government. Without the heavy identity of being part of a nation or a party, your soul is supposedly free to be completely tranquil.
Because the artificial maps only distract you from the actual territory. Following this logic to its absolute end, the philosophy arrives at complete indifference to physical survival.
Which is rule number 5, I think.
Yeah. Whether you starve, freeze, get struck, or die of illness. Well, the text states it does not matter. You will inevitably die. Therefore, you are instructed to sit calmly, like a fisherman anchored in a boat, completely indifferent to whether the wind blows from the north, south, east, or west.
So what does this all mean? We finally reached the last principle in the text, rule number 8. After pages of advocating for trading wars like passing jokes, celebrating the loss of wealth, burning religious texts, and smiling at the prospect of freezing to death.
All very intense things.
Very intense. But the final rule is simply this. Day by day, seek joy. Constantly look for happiness, fully experience life, and leave no regrets on this journey of the heart. I find this to be a brilliant paradox.
It really is the hinge upon which the entire philosophy turns.
After all this uncompromising talk about letting absolutely everything go,
Yeah.
the end goal is not to become an emotionless, unfeeling statue meditating in a dark cave.
No, not at all.
The goal is to systematically clear out every single source of anxiety so that you actually have the capacity to have fun.
Exactly. The collapse of institutions, the departure of lovers, the loss of status, none of this is framed as a destructive, nihilistic tragedy. It is framed as clearing the debris so you can return to a natural state of being.
And if we look at how you, listening right now, might apply this in a modern context, the utility becomes pretty obvious.
Oh, absolutely.
We live in an era of relentless information overload.
Yeah.
We're pinged constantly with geopolitical crises, economic panics, and heavy social expectations.
We spend our entire days gripping that steering wheel in the rain.
We really do. But imagine applying just a fraction of this mindset to your routine. Imagine viewing a highly stressful corporate presentation not as a life or death referendum on your value, but just as a passing cloud.
Or viewing a delayed flight or a spilled cup of coffee as nature simply putting on a play.
Right. By embracing even 10% of this inevitability, the reduction in your daily anxiety would be staggering. We aren't letting go of control in order to give up. We're letting go to make room for actual, unburdened joy.
It is a complete rewiring of how we interact with stress.
It is. So let's quickly trace the journey we've taken on this deep dive today. We started with the lofty imagery of soaring eagles and swimming dragons, illustrating the promise of living a life untouched by the need for control.
Right, and then we examine some truly provocative cognitive reframing techniques, learning how shrinking a tsunami into a mundane annoyance protects the mind from the weight of global chaos.
We then explored the intimate application of this philosophy. We discussed the transition from a mindset of anxious ownership over our loved ones to a peaceful stewardship, recognizing that all relationships are temporary and all birds eventually leave the cage.
Such a powerful shift.
And finally, we analyzed the core themes of the carefree roamer, discovering that the ultimate purpose of accepting inevitability, embracing filial piety, and shedding the heavy shackles of wealth and institutions isn't to achieve emptiness.
No, it is to fully, joyfully experience the daily ride of life without the suffocating weight of fear.
It is about stripping away the anxiety of the future so that only the experience of the present remains.
That is the ultimate freedom.
As we wrap up, we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. one that builds on Shufeng's text. If you genuinely lived as if everything was inevitable, if you truly believed at your core that absolutely nothing was under your control, would you lose your motivation to improve your life?
It's a tough question.
Or, by finally giving up that exhausting white-knuckled illusion of control, would you suddenly find you have the massive reserves of energy required to truly experience happiness?
It really forces us to ask where our mental energy is going toward experiencing life or trying to manage it.
So true. Next time it starts pouring rain on the highway, take a breath, check your hands, and maybe, just maybe, loosen your grip on the wheel. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Thank you for listening. Goodbye, and safe travels on your journey.